Hello and welcome to another video aiming to get you the top grades. Today, as you know, we're looking at the setting of Jekyll and Hyde. Now, I've chosen this because setting will fit any single question you get on Jekyll and Hyde. It doesn't matter what the question is, knowing about the setting you will use as a quotation or more than one quotation in every essay. So in this essay we will look at an extract, possibly the most important one about setting. Then I'll show you all the other little quotations about setting that I think will be super useful to you. I've actually found 12 of these. I'll show you how you can find anything you want on Project Gutenberg. So let's imagine you want to revise not the setting but Hyde's character or the references to ape in the novel or whatever. I'll show you how to do that really efficiently using Project Gutenberg. Then finally I'll show you how to turn that into paragraphs where you think through your essay writing. But because I'm writing about every single setting in the novel, that ends up at nearly 1600 words. And then I'll show you how to condense that down to the number of words you could write in 45 minutes. So I've written that as 700 words to be a grade 9 essay. And I'll do a separate video on this essay because that would take longer. Right, I will read the extract to you. Some of you might find this annoying, so you can skip that part and fast forward till you see this bit, because that's what I'm doing after the reading. So here's what your instruction will look like. Read the following extract from chapter 1 and then answer the question that follows. It chanced on one of these rambles that their way led down a by-street in a busy quarter of London. The street was small and what is called quiet, but it drove a thriving trade on the weekdays. The inhabitants were all doing well, it seemed, and all emulously hoping to do better still, and laying out the surplus of their gains in coquetry, so that the shop fronts stood along that thoroughfare with an air of invitation like rows of smiling saleswomen. Even on Sunday, when it veiled its more florid charms and lay comparatively empty of passage, the street shone out in contrast to its dingy neighbourhood, like a fire in a forest, and with its freshly painted shutters, well-polished brasses, and general cleanliness and gaiety of note, instantly caught and pleased the eye of the passenger. 2 doors from one corner on the left hand going east, the line was broken by the entry of a court, and just at that point a certain sinister block of building thrust forward its gable on the street. It was 2 stories high, showed no window, nothing but a door on the lower story and a blind forehead of discoloured wall on the upper, and bore in every feature the marks of prolonged and sordid negligence. The door, which was equipped with neither bell nor knocker, was blistered and disdained. Tramps slouched into the recess and struck matches on the panels. Children kept shop upon the steps. The schoolboy had tried his knife on the mouldings, and for close on a generation no one had appeared to drive away these random visitors or to repair their ravages. Mr. Enfield and the lawyer were on the other side of the by-street, but when they came abreast of the entry, the former lifted up his cane and pointed. "Did you ever remark that door?" he asked. And when his companion had replied in the affirmative, "It is connected in my mind," added he, "with a very odd story." "Indeed," said Mr. Utterson, with a slight change of voice. "And what was that?" Exam question. Starting with the extract, how does Stevenson use settings throughout the novel? Now, it's worth saying that this extract is slightly longer than you'd get in the exam, and it's also worth saying that you could write a whole essay just on that extract, but I'm only going to use bits of the extract because the question is asking me to look at settings throughout the novel, and that will ultimately be more useful to you because then you know you'll have information that fits any essay. So for your revision, you want to find every setting you can think about. So I begin with Leicester Square. This is where Dr. Jekyll lived, and it's right next door to Soho, which is where Hyde lives. Now, the point of that is that they're really two sides of the same place. In the novella, it looks like these are entirely separate. But if you look at a map of London, Leicester Square is here. Jekyll's house is right there at this end of Leicester Square. You can walk straight across the square, up this road, and once you're past there, you're in Soho, look. They are absolutely next door to each other, and that links entirely to what Stevenson is saying about the duality of man. We are good and evil side by side, just like Jekyll and Hyde are side by side, but even in the geography they are side by side. And Stevenson would expect his readers to instantly realise that's what he was up to. And it's easy for a modern audience not to appreciate exactly why that setting exists. Right, Utterson visits Soho after Hyde's killed Sir Danvers Carew, because you remember Hyde gave him his address. And this is what he says. It was by this time about 9 in the morning, and the first fog of the season, a great chocolate-coloured pall lowered under heaven. So here, the area of Soho is supposed to be sinister and disgusting, which is why it's covered in fog. And that also links with the personality of Hyde, who wants to stay hidden, and therefore geographically the area is also hidden. We've got pathetic fallacy at work there. But let's look at what is going on. It's also described as something delicious, chocolate, in fact great chocolate. So we're suddenly associating it with pleasures of the senses. And then he contrasts that with the idea of a pall. A pall is a black covering that you would put over a coffin, so it signifies death. So again, this symbolism foreshadows the death of Hyde, and it also suggests that London is dying from corruption. But we're not done there, because you would expect the pall to be put over London like it's put over a coffin, but look at the next bit, it's lowered over heaven. So actually, Stevenson is suggesting that this fog isn't obscuring London, it's obscuring heaven. Heaven is what's dying. And so in this reading, he's suggesting that God is dead. Now we've got two possible interpretations there. For the Christian reader, it suggests that London has turned away from God and therefore they're denying his existence because of the immorality and corruption there. But to Stevenson, who was an atheist, he's arguing the opposite. Actually, God himself is dead because he does not exist. And this leads us to another view, which I'll cover in detail in a future video, that actually Hyde is not very evil, and Stevenson only presents him as evil in order to satisfy his Christian readers. Right, let's look at 3 more settings that will get you grade 7 and above. There would be a glow of a rich, lurid brown, like the light of some strange conflagration. So conflagration here means a fire, and a strange conflagration suggests that it is an unusual fire, and he's using the language here of the Christian preacher in church. And so a conflagration here would suggest the fires of hell. Again, he's making that link between the corrupt London society and the immorality of the people who end up in hell. He's also obviously making a link to Hyde, because the Christian reader is going to see Hyde as the embodiment of evil. So obviously he chooses to live in a part of Soho in which evil can grow and thrive. This evil of the city is picked up here in Utterson's dreams and nightmares. Through wider labyrinths of lamp-lighted city, and at every street corner crush a child and leave her screaming. So this is the nightmare that Utterson has when he hears the story about Hyde, and he imagines Hyde in his dreams. That's a separate video again about the significance of that dream. However, here, what he's saying is that the city is itself a labyrinth. And a labyrinth in Greek myth leads someone towards their destruction and death. And here in the Christian symbolism, it's suggesting that it is leading them into sin and temptation. So here, Stevenson is offering his readers the idea that London will corrupt you. And it also then gives us the idea of Hyde, who has apparently crushed this girl, makes him the figure of evil. Although in another video I will show you that actually Hyde does nothing wrong when he knocks that girl over, but that, as I say, is for a different grade 9 video. Now we come to the first description of Jekyll's house. Now Stevenson uses that symbolically all the time, and it symbolises the duality of man. On the outside we've got the respectable face, and on the inside we've got the hidden sinfulness. And that is mirrored exactly in the respectable Jekyll, which is the outside, and the interior is the sinful Hyde. Round the corner from the by-street there was a square of ancient handsome houses, now for the most part decayed from their high estate, and let in flats and chambers to all sorts and conditions of men, map engravers, architects, shady lawyers, and the agents of obscure enterprises. One house, however, second from the corner, was still occupied entire, and at the door of this, which wore a great air of wealth and comfort. So this is Jekyll's house, and you can see how it stands out. It is handsome, and it is not been let off to lots of different men, but is owned entirely by Jekyll. That perhaps is a symbol of how he has more evil than the other houses, which are let out to lots and lots of men, because his creation of Hyde is supposed to be the creation of the ultimate evil character. Then we have Hyde's house, which we met in the extract. So this is the rear of Jekyll's house, which is personified. It has a blind forehead of discoloured wool on the upper, and this personification will point to the blindness of society, turning a blind eye to the evil within it. In other words, rich men like Jekyll, apparently respectable men, are allowed to indulge in their sinful passions under cover of darkness, just like Enfield does. So that passage comes to us from Enfield, but he's been out doing whatever he's been doing, which is probably just the same as what Hyde has been doing, out at 3 a.m. in the morning. But it's Hyde who is presented as a guilty character instead of Enfield. And Stevenson's point is all middle-class men are just like Jekyll and Hyde. It just so happens that Jekyll has managed to release his inner passions and desires as a separate identity in Hyde, but everyone else has that identity inside them. Stevenson then contrasts that with Hyde's address in Soho. So Soho symbolises all the sinfulness in London. It was known as a place of ill repute where crimes could be committed and the law wouldn't do much about it, full of prostitution, drug dens, gin palaces and what have you. But Stevenson doesn't actually buy into that. When we read it closely, Hyde lives in a really, really tasteful place. He had only used a couple of rooms, but these were furnished with luxury and good taste. A closet was filled with wine, the plate was of silver, the napery elegant, a good picture hung upon the walls, a gift, as Utterson supposed, from Henry Jekyll, who was much of a connoisseur, and the carpets were of many piles and agreeable in colour. So what's astonishing here is that this is an educated gentleman's house. And Stevenson does this a lot. Look out for it in your revision. Whenever he puts something in brackets, he always wants us to view it with an air of detachment and perhaps irony. So here he's suggesting that Utterson wrongly supposed that Dr. Jekyll has furnished this house. In fact, he hasn't. Hyde has furnished it himself. And he's a man who appreciates pleasures. That's what a connoisseur is, someone with a sophisticated taste, an educated taste. So he will understand what good wine is and what good art is. And so something really subtle is going on here, which I can't explore fully in this video because it would be too long. But the basic premise is this. Stevenson actually thinks that Hyde has got a lot of redeeming qualities. He's actually a character who is a gentleman at heart. Now, on the one hand, he does this to criticise all gentlemen, but on the other hand, Stevenson is also suggesting that what society views as evil perhaps is not evil at all. And until he kills Sir Danvers Carew, Hyde does not commit any evil acts. Instead, it's the other characters who react in an evil way towards him. And you need to know a bit of important biographical information here. So autobiographically, Stevenson rejected British society as too restrained. He didn't like this Christian morality, and he was in fact much more in tune with Hyde's pleasure seeking than Dr. Jekyll's desire to become respectable. And so this is his house. You can visit it on the island of Samoa. So he went somewhere that was considered pagan at the time, not Christian, where he could live a much freer existence, built himself this huge house up near the mountains in order to escape British society. So let's click on this image, which is what it was like at his time. And there he is, Robert Louis Stevenson. You can see how he's completely rejected this idea of what conventional British society would be, and he's much attracted to the primitive sort of man. And you'll be familiar with that image of the primitive man in Hyde, the man who is called a troglodyte, and indeed who racist Victorians would have called ape-like because of their inherent racism. That's how they might well have referred to natives of Samoa. But what does Stevenson do? He embraces that aspect of society because he thinks it's actually more pure and more noble than the apparently civilized society of Britain. So you've got a real sense of complexity now that will lead you to grade 9. Right, you can base further revision on these paragraphs should you choose, but I don't want to make the video too long. We're going to come down to paragraph number 10 here. Let me just get that for you with paragraph 11. So now let's look at the murder scene. And next moment, with ape-like fury, he was trampling his victim underfoot and hailing down a storm of blows, under which the bones were audibly shattered, and the body jumped upon the roadway. At the horror of these sights and sounds, the maid fainted. Well, here he takes an absolutely ordinary London setting and introduces great murder to it, because he wants this kind of gothic attraction towards evil violence that his readers would so have loved. Well, what's interesting here is Stevenson actually hated this book. He loathed it because he was having to write something for readers that he didn't respect. And he makes fun of that in this setting because the maid is actually sitting some distance away at a window, and yet she claims she can hear the bones being absolutely shattered and cracking underneath the blows from Hyde. And he expects a sophisticated reader to laugh at this. And the other way he makes fun of it in the setting is by having Sir Danvers Carew dead body actually jumping on the roadway, even though it's under Hyde's feet. In other words, Hyde's standing on top of it as he smashes it with his cane, and yet the maid still describes it as jumping up and down on the roadway, which of course the sophisticated reader realizes is ridiculous. But the sensationalist reader, caught up in the moment, loving this description of violence, will not realize that it is ridiculous. Okay, let me show you how I found the quotations that I needed. So I went into Project Gutenberg, which is every book that's out of copyright. Then I'm going to type in Jekyll and Hyde into the search function there and see how long that takes to come up. And there it is. I can get it as an ebook or an audio book, or I can get it hopefully in a Word format. So we're going to go for the plain text option here. I'll click on that. And there it is. Now let's imagine I want to revise something. Let's say it's when Hyde takes control of Jekyll and he turns into Hyde while Jekyll hasn't taken a potion. And I vaguely remember that that happens in a park and there was focus on the hand, and I'm not sure which. So if I just put the word park in there, that will search the whole text for me with park. It jumps to park for me, and then I can find that description. There it is. This is the very moment where he turns into Hyde for the first time without the aid of drugs. And I can just simply copy and paste that for my revision, making sure that I only get the bits that I actually want. Or I might want to look at the Christian symbolism in the novella, so I'll just type the word Satan into the search bar, and it tells me there are 3 examples. And there's the first one, Satan's signature upon the face. And then when he transforms in front of Dr. Lanyon, your sight shall be blasted by a prodigy to stagger the unbelief of Satan. And the first description of Hyde, when he is pretending not to be scared and carrying it off, sir, really like Satan. So my point is to show you how useful Project Gutenberg is going to be, helping you with your revision. Now, only the very best students, the ones really striving to improve their grades, will have got this far in the video. So I'm not going to keep waffling on. What I'm going to give you is a bonus feature. So these are all my notes written up as one giant essay for you. So if you freeze the screen, you can take notes as you wish, or not. You can bail out and go and do something else. Next, it carries on here. And then here, I'll keep allowing you to freeze the screen. It continues again. Here is another screen with some more paragraphs. And 3 more paragraphs for you. And then, hurrah! The end. Now, in my next video in this series, it won't be the next video I make, but the next one in this series, I will show you how I turn that into a 700-word grade 9 essay. So look out for that, because that will make both a shorter video and something that you can reproduce in 45 minutes during your exam. So congratulations if you've made it this far. You'll now be able to do everything that grades 7 and 8 and 9 require. I won't go through these now, they'll be in my next video too, but you can read. You're highly intelligent, otherwise you wouldn't have got this far in the video. You'd given up long ago and gone to do something else far less intellectual, and there you go. That's what you'll be learning next, or you've already learnt by watching this video. Good luck in your revision. Give me some comments. Has this been useful, or would you rather I made much shorter videos? And see you soon on my channel.